How would the Ergo Foundation use their funds if Ergo mooned? How would they use it if it tanked? Well, one thing I will tell you about Alex in general is that he is a pretty conservative character. And what does that mean is that he tries to say, okay, well, based on the value that we spend, what's the best long-term return? And that's been very development focused in Ergo. The Ergo Foundation in and of itself is relatively small in comparison to a lot of the DAOs or entities that are behind blockchains. You know, when we started out, the total emission of the Ergo Foundation was over 4%. And one thing you have to remember is that, you know, being that we've been around for a while, the price of Ergo was quite low. So it kind of naturally created this mentality that we need to be conservative, we need to conserve value and try to deliver the maximal amount of development and tooling we can with the least amount of cost. I don't see that changing, in all honesty. I know you have a lot of big VC-backed entities that, you know, are like, hey, let's go throw a Monaco yacht party, right? I don't ever see Ergo trying to compete with that. I don't know if it creates, let's say, the right incentives. I think the Ergo Foundation first should work with education and developing open source frameworks that are reusable, right? And I often create the comparison here to Ethereum. One thing that they did amazingly well was they promoted the education around Solidity, right? So when Solidity first came out, it was pretty high level, it was new. There were not a lot of developers out in the world that knew how to play with it or work with it. And through going through the process of creating open source frameworks and tooling around working with Solidity, it's become extremely popular. And also it's become much easier to where the barrier of entry is lower. Now, what does that do? It's created not just massive growth on, you know, the Ethereum blockchain, but how many EVM chains out there either use Solidity or Ether.js? A ton. And so it's not something that I think we even have to reinvent the wheel with, right? There's already an existing framework to saying, okay, you have a new smart contract model, you have a new smart contract language. How do you encourage the adoption of it? Because that adoption of it leads to growth, right? And I think that's probably one of the most important roles of the Ergo Foundation, aside from just general marketing and market access, because you do need a central entity to do business in this world. And the Ergo Foundation does serve that to the community. But ideally, the Ergo Foundation is somewhat of a temporary entity. I would like to see the community kind of decentralize it over time. I know that's a goal that Alex has shared. And hopefully we create the right incentives and frameworks and educational tools that allows new developers to come on and get creative. You know, there's a question that gets asked every once in a while, you know, where do you see yourself in 5 years, right? And I always think that question is a little bit funny because the goal of a decentralized system is to give power to users and developers, right? I'm not the guy to answer that. I would like to see good open source frameworks that are reusable. I'd like to see education certainly be at the forefront to where we have more developers coming on and building on our network. But what they actually build and what's popular, I have no damn idea, you know, especially if you look at, let's say Ethereum is a good example because it's been around a while. You know, you had a thing where you had cats and then you made new cats. It's kind of random and unpredictable. You have, you know, Uniswap, DeFi protocols, name services. That came from the creativity of the developer community. And so our goal ultimately is to empower them. And they'll answer that question based on the ideas and passion that they have.